Good day everyone. I'm Mike Julius M. Napiza, your discussant for today. And my topics under Chapter 11, The Heights of Imperialism. First, Section 3, British Rule in India, and Section 4, Nation Building in Latin America. So first, let's tackle the British rule in India. British rule in India. In this topic, British rule brought stability to India but destroyed native industries and degraded Indians. Next is Mohandas Gandhi advocated non-violent resistance to gain Indian independence from Great Britain. So next, the Sepoy Mutiny. Over the course of the 18th century, British power in India had increased while the power of the Mughal rulers had declined. A trading company, the British East India Company, was given power by the British government to become actively involved in India's political and military affairs. To rule India, the British East India Company had its own soldiers and forts. It also hired Indian soldiers known as sepoys to protect the company's interests in religion. Next is in 1857, a growing Indian distrust of British led to a revolt. The revolt was known to the British as a Great Rebellion or the Sepoy Mutiny. Indians call it the First War of Independence. Next is the major immediate cause of revolt was the spread of rumor that the British were issuing their Indian troops new bullets that were greased with cow and pig fat. So the cow was sacred to Hindus. The pig was taboo to Muslims. Next is a group of sepoys at an army post near Delhi refused to load their rifles with the new bullets. So when the British arrested them, the sepoys went on rampage and killed 50 European men, women, and children. Next is from the beginning, the revolt quickly spread. Within a year, Indian troops loyal to British, along with fresh British troops, had crushed the rebellion. Although Indian troops fought bravely and outnumbered the British by about 230,000 to 40,000, they were not well organized. Rivalries between Hindus and Muslims kept Indians from working together. Next is atrocities were terrible on both sides. At Kanpur, Indians armed with swords and knives massacred 200 defenseless women and children in a building known as a House of Ladies. When the British recaptured Kanpur, they took their revenge before executing the Indians. So, as a result of uprising, the British Parliament transferred the powers of East India Company directly to the British government. In 1876, the title of Empress of India was bestowed on Queen Victoria. The people of India were now her colonial subjects, and India became her jewel in the crown. Colonial rule. The British government ruled India directly through a British official known as a viceroy, a governor who ruled as a representative of a monarch, who was assisted by a British civil service staff. Next is this staff of about 3,500 officials ruled almost 300 million people. The largest colonial population in the world, British rule involved both benefits and costs for Indians. Benefits of British rule. British rule in India had several benefits for subjects. First is it brought order and stability to a society that had been badly divided by civil war. Second is it also led to fairly honest and efficient government. 3. Railroads, the telegraph, and postal service were introduced to India shortly after they appeared in Great Britain. Last is in 1853, the first Ryan Run, a passenger train, traveled the short distance from Bombay to Britain. So, through the efforts of Britain administrator and historian Lord Thomas Macaulay, a new school system was set up. Its goal was to train Indian children to serve in the government and army. The new system served only elite upper-class Indians. However, 90% of population remain illiterate. Next is cost of British rule. The Indian people, however, paid a high price for the peace and stability brought by British rule. First, perhaps the greatest cost was economic. So British entrepreneurs and a small number of Indians reaped financial benefits from British rule, but it brought hardships to millions of others in both the cities and countryside. Next is British manufactured goods destroyed local industries. So the introduction of British textiles put thousands of women out of work and severely damaged the Indian textile industry. Next is in rural areas, the British sent the zamindars to collect taxes. So the British believed that using these local officials would make it easier to collect taxes from the peasants. However, the zamindars in India took advantage of their new authority. They increased taxes and forced the less fortunate peasants to become tenants or lose their land entirely. Next is the British also encouraged many farmers to switch from growing food to growing cotton. As a result, food supplies could not keep up the growing population. So between 1800 and 1900, 30 million Indians died of starvation. Finally, British rule was degrading, even for the newly educated upper class who benefited the most from it. The best jobs and the best housing were reserved for Britons. Although many British colonial officials sincerely tried to improve the lot of people in India, British arrogance cut deeply into the pride of many Indians. Despite their education, the Indians were never considered equals of the British. So Lord Kitchener, one of the Britain's military commanders in India, said, "It is this consciousness of the inherent superiority of the European which has won for us India. However well educated and clever a native may be, and however brave he may prove himself, I believe that no rank we can bestow on him would cause him to be considered an equal of British officer." Next is the British also showed disrespect for India's cultural heritage. So the Taj Mahal, for example, a tomb for the beloved wife of an Indian ruler, became a favorite site of English weddings and parties. Many partygoers even brought hammers to chip off pieces as souvenirs. Next is British racial attitudes led to rise of an Indian nationalist movement. British officials home in India. During the time that India was a British colony, many British government officials spent a considerable amount of time there fulfilling their administrative duties. Their families usually came with them during their tours of duty, bringing their Victorian lifestyle and many of furnishings that went with it. So first, British officials in India built comfortable bungalows, as they were called bungalows. The name comes from the Indian word bungla, which means Bengali, or elegant and spacious country houses. So many had large porches that were open to breezes, which protecting the inhabitants from the sun. Surrounding the bungalows were cottages. Dozens of Indians servants lived with their families. Next is the official was the sahib or the master. The official's wife was the mem sahib or the madam sahib. The mem sahib was expected to oversee the running of the household on a daily basis, especially since the sahib was often away on official businesses. At the beginning of each day, she assigned duties to all the servants. For example, she fixed the menu for the day with the cook and directed the gardeners about how to plant the gardens with seeds from home. In the evening, she was expected to entertain super parties with other British families were the usual form of entertainment. Next is Indian nationalist movement. The first Indian nationalists were upper class and English educated. Many of them were from urban areas such as Mumbai, then called Bombay, Chennai or Madras, and Calcutta. Some were trained in British law and were members of the civil service. So at first, many preferred reform to revolution. But the slow pace of reform convinced many Indian nationalists that relying on British goodwill was futile. So in 1885, a small group of Indians met in Mumbai to form an Indian Nationalist Congress or INC. The INC did not demand immediate independence but did call for a share in governing process. So the INC had difficulties because of religious differences. The goal of the INC was to seek independence for all Indians, regardless of class or religious background. However, Many of its leaders were Hindu and reflected Hindu concerns. So eventually, the Muslims began to call for the creation of separate Muslims League to represent interests of millions of Muslims in Indian society. In 1915, the return of young Hindu from South Africa brought new life to India's struggle for independence. Mohandas Gandhi was born in 1869 in Gujarat, in western India. He studied in London and became a lawyer. In 1893, he went to South Africa to work in law firm serving Indian workers there. He soon became aware of the racial exploitation and Indians living in South Africa. So on his return home to India, Gandhi became active in the independence movement. Using his experience in South Africa, he set up a movement based on non-violent resistance. Its aim was to force the British to improve a lot of the poor and grant independence to India. Ultimately, Gandhi's movement would lead to Indian independence. Next is colonial Indian culture. The love-hate tension in India that arose from British domination led to a cultural as well as a political awakening. The cultural revival began in early 19th century with the creation of British College in Calcutta. Next is a local publishing house was opened. It issued textbooks on variety of subjects, including sciences, Sanskrit, and Western literature. The publisher also printed grammars and dictionaries in the various Indian languages. Next is the revival soon spread to other regions of India, leading to a search for modern literary expression and a new national identity. Indian novelists and poets began writing historical romances and epics. Some wrote in English, but most were uncomfortable with a borrowed colonial language. They preferred to use their own regional tongues. Next is the most illustrious Indian author was Rabindranath Tagore, a great writer and poet. Tagore was also a social reformer, spiritual leader, educator, philosopher, singer, painter, and international spokesperson for the moral concerns of his age. So he liked to invite the great thinkers of time to his countryside. There, he set up a school that became an international university. So Tagore's life mission was to promote pride in a national Indian's consciousness in the face of British domination. So he wrote a widely read novel in which he portrayed love-hate relationship of India toward its colonial mentor. Next is the novel depicted a country that admired and imitated the British model while also agonizing over how it could establish a modern identity separate from the Great Britain. So Tagore was more than an Indian nationalist. His life works was a long prayer for human dignity, world peace and mutual understanding and union of East and West. As he once said, it is my conviction that my countrymen will truly gain their India by fighting against the education that teaches them the country is greater than the ideals of humanity. Now let's move to section 4, nation building in Latin America. So before the main independence movements began, unusual revolution took place in a French colony of Saint Dominic on the island of Hispaniola. So he led by more than 100,000 slaves rose in revolt and seized controls of all Hispaniola. On January 1, 1804, the western part of Hispaniola, now called Haiti, announced its freedom and became the first independent state in Latin America. Nationalist revolts. By the end of 18th century, the new political ideals stemming from the successful revolution in North America were beginning to influence Latin America. European control would be soon in peril. Next is social classes based on privilege divided colonial Latin America. Peninsulares at the top held all important positions. Creoles controlled land and business but were regarded as second-class citizens by Peninsulares. Mestizos were called the largest group but worked as servants, laborers. Next is the Creole elites were especially influenced by revolutionary ideals. Creoles were descendants of Europeans born in Latin America and lived there permanently. They supported the legal equality of all people, free trade, and free press. In addition, they, along with a growing class of merchants, disliked the domination of their trade by Spain and Portugal. Creoles deeply resented the Peninsulares, Spanish and Portuguese officials who resided temporarily in Latin America for political and economic gain and then returned to their mother countries. Next is the Creole elites soon began to denounce the rule of the Spanish and Portuguese. So at the beginning of 19th century, Napoleon's war provided them with an opportunity for change. When Napoleon overthrew the monarchies of Spain and Portugal, their authority in the colonies was several weakened. Between 1807 and 1825, a series of revolts freed most of Latin America. Next is revolt in Mexico. Beginning in 1810, Mexico experienced a revolt. The first real hero of Mexican independence was Miguel Hidalgo. Miguel Hidalgo was a parish priest in a small village about 100 miles from Mexico City. Hidalgo, who had studied the French Revolution, roused the local Native Americans and mestizos to free themselves from the Spanish. Next is on September 16, 1810, a crowd of Native Americans and mestizos armed with clubs, machetes, and few guns formed a mob army to attack the Spaniards. Hidalgo was an experienced military leader, however, and his forces were soon crushed. So a military court sentenced Hidalgo to death, but his memory lived on. Next is, in fact, September 16, the first day of the uprising, Mexico's Independence Day. So, one of Hidalgo's followers, Jose Morelos, then took up the campaign, capturing Acapulco in 1813, but finally, he too was caught and executed. The participation of Native Americans and mestizos in Mexico's revolt against Spanish control frightened both Creoles and Peninsulares there. Next, they selected a Creole military leader, Agustin de Iturbide, as their leader. Next is in 1821, Mexico declared its independence from Spain. Iturbide named himself emperor in 1822 but was deposed in 1823. Mexico then became a republic. Next is revolts in South America. Jose de San Martin of Argentina and Simon Bolivar of Venezuela, both members of the Creole elite, were hailed as the liberators of South America. So these men led revolutions throughout the continent. San Martin believed that the Spaniards must be removed from all of South America if any South American nation was to be free. By 1810, the forces of San Martin had liberated Argentina from Spanish authority. Bolivar began the struggle for independence, led revolts in New Granada or Colombia and Ecuador. In January 1817, San Martin, joined by Bernardo O'Higgins, led a force over the Andes to attack the Spanish in Chile. The journey was an amazing feat. So, two-thirds of the pack mules and horses died during the trip. Soldiers suffered from lack of oxygen and severe cold while crossing mountain passes that were more than 2 miles above sea level. So, next is in 1821, San Martin moved on to Lima, Peru, the center of Spanish authority. So, convinced that he could not complete the liberation of Peru alone, San Martin welcomed the arrival of Bolivar and his forces. The liberator of Venezuela took on the task of crushing the last significant Spanish army at Ayacucho on December 9, 1824. End of 1824, Peru, Uruguay, Paraguay, Colombia, Venezuela, Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile had all become free of Spain. Earlier in 1822, the Prince Regent of Brazil had declared Brazil's independence from Portugal. The Central American states had become independent in 1823. Next is in 1838 and 1839, they divided into 5 republics. First is Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Costa Rica, and Nicaragua. In the early 1820s, only one major threat remained to the newly won independence on the Latin American states. Members of the Concert of Europe favored the use of troops to restore Spanish control in Latin America. The British, who wished to trade with Latin America, disagreed. So they proposed joint action with the United States against any European moves in Latin America. So more important to Latin American independence than American words was Britain's navy. So other European powers feared British naval power, which stood between Latin America and in any European invasion. Next is difficulties of nation building. The new Latin American nations faced a number of serious problems between 1830 and 1870. So first, the wars for independence had resulted in staggering loss of people, property, and livestock. Unsure of their precise boundaries, the new nations went to war with one another to settle border disputes. Next is poor roads and lack of railroads, thick jungles and mountains made communication, transportation, and national unity difficult. So during the course of 19th century, the new Latin American nations would become economically dependent on Western nations once again. Next is rule of caudillos. Most of the new nations of Latin America began with republican governments, but they had no experience in ruling themselves. Soon after independence, strong leaders known as caudillos came into powers. Next is caudillos ruled chiefly by military force and were usually supported by the landed elites. So many kept the new national states together. Some were also modernizers who built roads and canals, ports, and schools. Others were destructive. Next is Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, for example, ruled Mexico from 1833 to 1855. He misused state funds, halted reforms, and created chaos. In 1835, American settlers in the Mexican state of Texas revolted against Santa Anna rule. Next is Texas gained its independence in 1836 and United States statehood in 1845. War between Mexico and the United States soon to follow in 1846 to 1848. So Mexico was defeated and lost almost one half of its territory to the United States in the Mexican War. Fortunately for Mexico, Santa Anna's disastrous rule was followed by a period of reform from 1855 to 1876. This era was dominated by Benito Juarez and Mexican national hero. The son of Native American peasants, President Juarez brought liberal reforms to Mexico, including separation of church and state, land distribution to poor, and an educational system for all Mexico. Next is other caudillos, such as Juan Manuel de Rosas in Argentina, were supported by the masses, became extremely popular, and brought about radical change. Next is a new imperialism. Political independence brought economic independence, but old patterns were quickly reestablished. Instead of Spain and Portugal, Great Britain now dominated the Latin American economy. British merchants moved into Latin America in large numbers, and British investors poured in funds. Old trade patterns soon re-emerged. So next is Latin America continued to serve as a source of raw materials and foodstuffs for the industrial nations of Europe and United States. So exports included wheat, tobacco, wool, sugar, coffee, and hides. At the same time, finished consumer goods, especially textiles, were imported. The emphasis of exporting raw materials and importing finished products ensured the ongoing domination of the Latin American economy by foreigners. Latin American countries remain economic colonies of Western nations even though they were no longer political colonies. Persistent inequality. A fundamental underlying problem for all the new Latin American nations was the domination of society by the landed elites. Large states remained a way of life in Latin America. So by 1848, the Sanchez Navarro family in Mexico possessed 17 states made up of 16 million acres. So, states were often so large that they could not be farmed efficiently. So, next is land remained the basis of wealth, social prestige, and political power throughout the 19th century. Landed elites ran governments, controlled courts, and kept a system of inexpensive labor. So these landowners made enormous profits by growing single and specialized crops such as coffee for export. The masses with no land to grow basic food crops experienced their poverty. Next is the United States in Latin America. In 1900, the United States, which had emerged as a world power, had begun to interfere in the affairs of its southern neighbors. So, as a result of the Spanish-American War in 1898, Cuba became a United States protectorate, and Puerto Rico was annexed to the United States. In 1903, the United States supported a rebellion that enabled Panama to separate itself from Colombia and establish a new nation. So in return, the United States was granted control of a strip of land 10 miles wide running from coast to coast in Panama. There, the United States built the Panama Canal, which was opened in 1914. The Panama Canal Facts. In 1534, Holy Roman Emperor Charles V ordered the first survey of a proposed canal routes across the Isthmus of Panama. The survey came back impossible. Next is the canal was constructed in two stages between 1881 and 1888 by a French company and between 1904 and 1914 by the United States. Next is the canal is 51 miles long. The average time a ship spends in transit is 8 to 10 hours. Next is there are 6 pairs of locks or a total of 12 locks. Each lock is 1,000 feet or 305-meter long and 110 feet or 35-meter wide. The lock system leaves ships 85 feet from 26 meter above the sea level. Next is about 140 million tons or 127 million of commercial cargo pass through the canal each year. Next is the Panama Canal locks. So, number 1, a ship arrives from the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean. Number 2, the ship enters the first lock and steel gates close behind it. Number 3, water flows into the lock from an artificial lake. When the water reaches the level of the next higher lock, gates open and the ship moves forward. Number 4, electric towing locomotives called mules pull the ship by cables through the locks. Number 5 is in a descending lock, water is drained to the level of the next lower lock and the ship advances. Next is the revolution in Mexico. In some countries, large landowners supported dictators who look out for the interests of the ruling elite. So, Porfirio Diaz, who ruled Mexico between 1877 and 1911, created a conservative centralized government with the support of the army, foreign capitalists, landowners, and the Catholic Church. So, all these groups benefited from their alliance. However, forces for change in Mexico led to a revolution. So, during Diaz's dictatorial reign, the wages of workers had declined. 95% of the rural population owned no land. There were areas about 1,000 families owned almost all Mexico. So, when a liberal landowner, Francisco Madero, forced Diaz from power in 1911. He opened the door to a wider revolution. Also, Jose de la Cruz Porfirio Diaz Mori, better known as Porfirio Diaz, was a Mexican general and politician who served 7 terms as President of Mexico, a total of 31 years from 28 November 1876 to 6 December 1876. and 17 February 1877 to 1 December 1880, and from 1 December 1884 to 25 maybe in 1911. So next is between 1910 and 1920, the Mexican Revolution caused great damage to Mexican economy. So finally, a new constitution enacted in 1917 set up a government led by a president, created land reforms policies, established limits on foreign investors, and set an agenda to help the workers. The revolution also led to an outpouring of patriotism. Intellectuals and artists sought to capture what was unique about Mexico with special emphasis of its past. Economic change in Latin America. After 1870, Latin America began an age of prosperity based to a large extent of the export of a few basic items. This included wheat and beef from Argentina, coffee from Brazil, coffee and bananas from Central America, and sugar and silver from Peru. So these foodstuffs and raw materials were largely exchanged for finished goods. So textiles, machines, and luxury items from Europe and the United States. After 1900, Latin Americans also increased their own industrialization, especially by building textile, food processing, and construction materials factories. So, one result of the prosperity from increased exports was growth in the middle sectors of Latin America society. Lawyers, merchants, shopkeepers, business people, school teachers, professors, bureaucrats, and military officers. So these middle sectors accounted for only 5 to 10% of population, hardly enough in numbers to make up a true middle class. So nevertheless, after 1900, the middle sectors of society continued to expand. Next is the middle sectors in Latin America sought liberal reform, not revolution. Once they had the right to vote, they generally sided with the landholding elites. So regardless of the country in which they live, middle-class Latin Americans shared some common characteristics. So they live in the cities, sought education and decent incomes, and saw the United States as a model, especially in regard to industrialization. So that's all my report. Thank you for listening.